dan penutupan Digital Talent Scholarship 2019.
Yang terhormat Dr. Insinyur Hedi MPhis MSc, Kepala Pusat Pengembangan Profesi dan Sertifikasi Balitbang SDM Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika beserta jajaran. Yang kami hormati Dr. Agustus Nizam WMM, Inspektur 3 Inspektorat Jenderal Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika. Yang kami hormati Rektor Universitas Andalas, yang dalam hal ini diwakili oleh Wakil Rektor 1 Universitas Andalas, Profesor Dr. Davianus APT beserta jajaran. Yang kami hormati Bapak dan Ibu Kepala Dinas di lingkungan Pemerintah Provinsi Sumatera Barat dan Kota Padang beserta jajaran. Yang kami hormati Bapak dan Dekan Fakultas Teknologi Informasi Universitas Andalas, Dr. Ahmad Syafruddin Indra Priyatna beserta jajaran. The Honorable Mr. Christopher Jackson as Teradata Solution Engineering Manager South Asia Pacific. Yang saya hormati Bapak dan Ibu Dekan dan pejabat struktural di lingkungan Universitas Andalas beserta jajaran. Yang kami hormati Bapak dan Ibu tamu undangan yang tidak dapat disebutkan satu persatu namanya. Seterusnya, kepada peserta Digital Talent Scholarship 2019 dan hadirin yang berbahagia.
Puji dan syukur, marilah kita sampaikan kehadiran Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala serta salawat dan salam kepada Nabi Muhammad SAW. Untuk memulai acara kita pada pagi hari ini, marilah kita menyanyikan lagu kebangsaan Indonesia Raya. Hadirin dimohon berdiri. Hadirin dipersilahkan duduk kembali.
Baiklah, selanjutnya marilah kita dengarkan pembacaan ayat suci Al-Quran yang akan dibacakan oleh Saudara Halim Wardani. Kepada Saudara Halim, disilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
يحكموك فيما شجر
walau annahum fa'alu ma yu'adun bihi lakana khairan lahum wa ashadda tasbita. Sadaqallahul azim. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Pembacaan doa yang akan dipimpin oleh Muhammad Hamdi. Kepada Saudara Hamdi, disilakan.
Sebelum kita melaksanakan rangkaian kegiatan kita pada hari ini, langkah lebih baiknya kita berdoa terlebih dahulu. Bagi yang muslim silakan menyesuaikan. Astaghfirullahalazim, astaghfirullahalazim, astaghfirullahalazim. A'udzu billahi minasyaitonir rajim. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahirabbil alamin. Hamdan yuafi na'imah, hamdan kasiran. Ya Allah, ya Rabbana, pada hari ini kami berkumpul dalam rangka sharing session dan closing ceremony Digital Talent Scholarship 2019 dengan mengharap ridho dan keagungan-Mu. Kami berdoa kepadamu, ya Allah. Ya Allah, ya Rabbi, dengan sharing session ini, jadikanlah agar apa yang kami dapatkan menjadi ilmu yang bermanfaat bagi kami semua dan bernilai ibadah di sisi-Mu, ya Rabbi. Ya Allah yang Maha memberi petunjuk, tunjukilah kepada kami jalan yang lurus. Mudahkanlah langkah kami dan usaha kami dalam memajukan agama, nusa dan bangsa. Ya Allah yang Maha Pengampun, ampunilah dosa kami, dosa kedua orang tua kami, dosa para dosen dan para pemimpin kami. Ya Allah, kiranya Engkau kabulkan doa dan pinta dari kami semua, ya Allah. Rabbana zalamna anfusana wa illam taghfir lana wa tarhamna lanakunanna minal khasirin. Rabbana taqabbal minna, ya Allah, ya mujibas sa'ilin. Rabbana atina fid dunya hasanah wa fil akhirati hasanah wa qina azabannar. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad. Subhana rabbika rabbil izzati amma yasifun wa salamun alal mursalin walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Acara selanjutnya, sharing session dengan topik The Future of Data, Analytics, Machine Learning, and Practical Application of Artificial Intelligence yang akan dimoderatori oleh Bapak Hasdi Putra MT. Kepada Bapak Hasdi disilakan untuk mengambil tempat ke depan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Mr. Chris Jackson yang sama-sama kita hormati, honorable to you. Okay, morning everybody. Selamat pagi semuanya. Peserta Digital Talent Scholarship 2019, applause dulu buat narasumber kita, Chris Jackson dari Teradata. Teradata Solution. Good morning. Beliau ini 30 tahun pengalaman lebih di bidang data, spesialisnya tentang data analitik, khususnya business intelligence. Sir, Oke, time mau kita panggilkan Mr. Chris Jackson untuk berada di hadapan kita bersama. Bagi yang kepo sebenarnya sudah bisa searching ya tentang beliau ini. Thanks. Bapak Dekan, Bapak Ibu pimpinan, instruktur Digital Talent Scholarship, peserta hadirin yang berbahagia, tidak berlama-lama, kita persilakan waktu untuk narasumber kita. Beliau ini adalah Teradata Solution Engineering Manager untuk South Asia dan Asia Pacific. Ya, oke. Untuk lebih lengkapnya, data beliau sendiri yang akan memperkenalkan. Please introduce yourself as you said before. Oke, saya tidak berlama-lama. Time is yourself, please.
Good morning.
Morning.
Thank you very much for having me here. I'm excited to be here. When I first met with Ahmad, I was thrilled to see that Indonesia is investing in data and artificial intelligence. Right? It's very much about the future, and that's what we'll talk about today. Right? So, I am the engineering manager for Teradata. Teradata is one of the market leaders in data and analytics, and we've been a company for 40 years, right? And so over the course of that 40 years, the company has evolved from beginning to collect data to all the way now to where we are one of the leaders in the deployment of artificial intelligence at scale for some of the largest companies and governments in the world. And so my job is for Teradata is to help our customers understand what is possible, right? What can they do with technology, and how do they actually get to an answer? You see our sign here, right? Invest in answers, right? Ultimately, technology serves a purpose, and that purpose is to generate what we call a business outcome, some result that makes a difference in the world, right? Changes how you do things, changes what you get, how do you build new value, right? And so what we use is data and analytics to generate new value, new ways of doing things. And that's what I'll talk to you about today, is how we do that and what we do.
Oke, plus terlebih dahulu kita akan bercerita tentang bagaimana data analitik beliau sudah advance di khusus data analitik di Teradata yang sudah 40-an tahun lebih. Sementara beliau sendiri sudah membawa banyak bidang. Kita persilakan pada kita, silakan untuk melanjutkan. Jadi khususnya beliau yang sudah menceritakan kepada kita semuanya. Okay, yes. So, introduce yourself.
So I started my career, and there's a slide if you go a step.
Okay.
There we go. Right? What do? Right? I started my career. My very first job was working for the White House. I was a student in the university, and I would go in at night and work on reports that they used to manage the government, right? The Health and Human Services part of the government.
Yes.
And so that was part of the Ronald Reagan White House, unfortunately, very long ago. So ever since then, I have done things with data, right? I've watched the whole industry create the terminology around data, from executive information systems to data marts and data warehousing, all the way now into analytics. And so I've helped, over the years, many different companies and banks, large healthcare organizations, construction companies, travel, airlines, right, modernize their infrastructure and make better decisions with data. And now we're taking this to the next level, and we're applying all of these new algorithms to look at customer behavior. We're looking at how do you automate the decision-making process, right? And that's the exciting part. So the industry keeps changing. So I've been doing this now for about 35 years, right? It's a long time to do the same thing, but no 2 days have been the same. I've done virtually every job role in the process of working with data, from data modeling to project manager to architect to testing to data design to negotiating agreements between government agencies, right? So I've covered the breadth of these things across my career. So now my responsibility is in sales, and I was responsible for our sales operations from the engineering perspective, the solutions for Pakistan, India, Indonesia, and Korea.
Oke. Tepuk tangan kembali lagi. Jadi beliau ini sudah keliling dunia tentang Teradata, tentang bagaimana mengelola data, data pemodelannya, data analitik keseluruhannya. Terakhir sekarang ini dia diamanahkan di Asia Pasifik dan South Asia. Today we will talking about the features data. Please you maybe what the next about data. And today, especially big data, about artificial intelligence, machine learning, maybe you can share for us today. Thanks, yourself.
So I'll tell you about some of the things my customers are asking me about today.
Yes.
One of my customers is asking me about connected vehicles. Every car that comes out probably in the next 5 years, will be collecting many data points about what's happening on the vehicle, right? It will be collecting how fast is it going, where is it located, right? What other vehicles are nearby, right? And all of that information today is stuck in the car. So the people that make the cars, the companies that actually manufacture the vehicle, once they sell it to the end consumer, they're disconnected. They don't know any more about how their car is being used, right? So they might see some touch points when you bring it back to a dealership to have it serviced, right? But how can they warn you that your car might be having a problem soon so that you can avoid the breakdown, right? How can they tell you that there's a traffic problem ahead, right? So the days of now are coming where that sensor data that's locked away in the car now needs to come somewhere. And when it comes out, it generates a lot of data, right? You get readings every second, every minute, every hour. And you take that and multiply that by tens of millions of vehicles, now you have a big problem. But you also have a huge opportunity. The problem is, where do you put it all? And once you put it somewhere, how do you use it to actually do something new? And that's the opportunity that we're talking about, is not only storing that data, but actually making use of it so that you can make recommendations, that you can tell people warnings of what's going to happen. When a part fails on one car, that we can recognize that other parts that came in the same batch from the same supplier might also be having problems soon as well, right? And those allow us to change how we actually work in the real world.
Okay, yes. Then, how can I change your slide?
So people ask me, what is pre-sales, right? So when we talk about selling our technology, when companies make an investment, our technology is not inexpensive, right? You're investing millions of dollars, right? Tens of billions of rupiah potentially, right? So when you spend those kind of investments, you're looking for a big return on that investment, right? Because you're going to invest not only the money you spend with our company, but all of the investment in the people, in the processes, and the applications you're going to build around that data. So what I have to do, and what my team does, right, I have a team of engineers in each of these countries, I work with our sales teams to take what the customer is thinking about and help them figure out what actually is going to do the job and be interesting, right? And this is a very old cartoon, actually, right? And maybe you've seen versions of this around, right? But customers often have ideas about what they want, and sometimes they make sense and sometimes they don't, right? So we help them figure out what would make sense and what is actually practical and reasonable to deploy and will meet the job expectations, right? And that's what my team does.
Okay, plus dulu kembali deh buat dulu kita. So you have to make inside what your customer what inside the data requirement, customer requirement.
Right. So the customer requirement is often what they're intending to do, right? And so when we talk to our customer the first time, they'll say, I want a system that does X, Y, and Z, right? And it has to do it this fast and be able to process 10 million transactions a day. And we say, wait a second, is that really what you want? Well, no, the real answer is, I want our customers to buy more frequently from us. Or I want to be able to serve them with a better quality product. Okay, so if that's the real goal, what are the things that matter to get us to that goal? Right? It might take a system that does tens of millions of transactions a day, or maybe not. Right? So we work backwards from what you want to have happen to what needs to be the start of that technology.
Okay. So for the next, please maybe we give you 20 minutes again. Please explain what you want to explain in your slide, and then we would like to summarize the concept.
All right. So maybe we can sort of step forward here on the next slide.
Next.
So the things I prepared probably more material than we have time to go through today, right? But it's available to you. You'll see the slides, available. I think it's already on your website. So what I wanted to talk about a little bit today is our vision for what a sentient enterprise is. How is this technology going to get used, right? I'll talk a little bit about what's actually happening in analytics and data science, all right? And if we have time, I'll share with you some of the resources that are available to you to be able to learn more about this, all right? Next. So the first topic we'll talk about is what we call the sentient enterprise. I have some customer success stories and some videos that we can share that will help you understand a little bit about the kinds of answers our customers are looking for. And I'll talk to you a little bit about our products and our roadmap, what we're intending to do, right? How we use it. We can talk a little bit about what it's like to be a data scientist, right? Those are interesting things. Next slide.
Next.
Okay. So the sentient enterprise is a concept that our company chief executive came up with. And what he was doing was looking to see how do we take organizations beyond just doing reports and collecting data to something that says we actually can make decisions with this in an automated way. And so they decided to say, how can we treat a company or a government like it's a living creature? What are the things it needs to be able to do with data to exist? Next slide.
Next. Next.
Okay, so there are essentially 5 stages a company needs to be able to go through to be able to get to be a really mature organization with data. The first one is that they need to have an agile data platform. You have to be able to collect data from lots of places. You have to be able to put it together, to integrate it together, to make it actually flexible enough to give you the answers that you're looking for. So We know that the technology changes all the time. It's going faster, not slower. So we need the flexibility to be able to deal with those changes really rapidly, right? The second thing is you need an actual place where you can look at customer behavior, right? Or employee behavior, or supplier behavior, right? Because those behaviors give you things you can react to. So I'll give you an example. One of the banks that I work with asked us to determine, could we figure out, just based on the transaction history that people have done in their accounts, who was running a business out of their personal account? You say, why would they want to know that? Well, it's not that they want to penalize people for using their personal account to run a business. It's that they want to be able to offer the right products so that those businesses can grow. Right? They want to take that and to give you a business account also. Right now, they'll stand to make some fees and some money in the process of doing that. But they really ultimately want to make their customers better. So how do you figure out who is going to actually be doing this? We can actually look at the patterns, and using the data, we figured out who was actually running a business. And was it a big business or a small business? Was it a business where we were actually doing online transactions? Was it an e-commerce business, or was it a traditional business? Right? There's lots of examples of these kinds of things. Right? The next one, right, is that it has to be a collaborative platform. Right? When you build an organization, data tends to end up in silos. It ends up in one part of the organization, and another part can't access it. So, for example, the customer service data is available to customer service representatives, but not to the product engineering. Well, doesn't product engineering want to know what customers are complaining about? Right? So that they can fix it in the next design. Wouldn't customer service agents love to know that the next design is available and is going to deal with this problem, so they can tell the customers the next version of our product will address this issue? Right? So we need to be able to let people share information about the data itself and how they use it. The next most important capability for an organization is to be able to start to build analytic applications. This is where you start to use that data to make it accessible to people who actually have the ability to make a decision and do something with it. The final step is when we write programs, and this is where the artificial intelligence really becomes interesting, where those programs begin to make the decisions and act on their own, right? And that's a key stage, right? When we start looking at this stuff, we're going to say, can we go all the way to an autonomous decisioning platform? The neat thing about these capabilities is you don't have to make a linear step. You don't have to do step 1 before you do step 2, before you do step 3. What you want is to have activity on all of these steps, and we're beginning to see organizations make these moves, right? And so we think it's a journey, right? That analytics is not something that you don't have one day and the next day you do, right? This is something that is going to take the next 20 or 30 years for organizations to absorb this new technology. We're at the very beginning of having sort of the critical mass. We've figured out how to store data, we've figured out how to bring it together, how to integrate it, but we're at the very beginning of how do we use it, right? How do we actually make this make a difference? But what's happened right now is we've gone through a period of disruption. And in that disruption, everything is changing, right? Technology is changing, organizations are changing, right? New competitors are emerging, right? More than half the companies that exist today, if you look in 50 years, they won't exist anymore. Well, what happened? They either got disrupted, somebody came up with a better idea, somebody used the data better, right? Most of these organizations will die because they did not maximize the value of the data, right? And so what we think is that organizations need to have what we call a North Star, right? So if you look up in the sky, there's one place that you want to be. That's the star that you navigate by. And what it means is we can't predict all of the change that's out there throughout all of this technology. We can't know necessarily everything that's coming next. We can see 2 years out, 3 years out, 5 years out. It's hard to see too much further with any kind of clarity. But if we have some ideas and we know these are the things that matter, we can begin to work on these things. Agility, the ability to automate decisioning, the ability to collaborate. Right? These are the critical skills of an enterprise organization. Right? And so this is what we help our customers do. So if you look at our customers, it's like climbing a mountain. Right? If that mountain is really tall, is there only one way up the mountain? No. Some may be easier than others. But every organization is starting from somewhere different, and they have a different route to climb. They have a different set of things where they're willing to invest and a different set of initiatives. This is what I help our teams navigate, to help our customers figure out, where on the mountain do I want to climb to? What is worth climbing to, that it's worth spending this effort, and how am I going to get there, and how am I going to use technology to do that? So we say, business outcome driven, technology enabled, right? We lead with those outcomes, right? And so as we, some of the companies here, one of the things that we know, right, is that we have to use these behavior patterns, right? I have another customer that was a utility company, and that had many people that were having their power shut off. And they said, we want to stop having this problem. We want people to always have power on. We don't want to turn them off, right? And they said, how do we get the number down? And they spent 1 year studying the people who were in what we call collections, right? They were already overdue on their bill, and they were likely to be shut off in the next 30 days, 60 days, 90 days. They spent 1 whole year studying those people. And when I first talked to them, I said, you need to study the people that aren't in collections yet, but are going to be in 90 days. Right? They're agreeing to it. They said, well, why would we look at the people who are current on their bill? I said, you need to figure out who is going to have a problem soon, and why, and what are the triggers. And it turns out, in this particular case, we found out that the trigger condition was when you changed how you paid your bill. Before, people were paying it electronically, and all of a sudden they went to paying in cash, right, where they paid at a 7-Eleven. That was the change in behavior that signaled that somebody was managing their money differently, and they were likely to have a problem with paying their bill. So the data told us what nobody could tell us anecdotally. Nobody could tell us how that problem was going to happen. So customer behaviors are really interesting, but you have to tease them out. That's what a data scientist does. It's a research project, right? So you have to ask yourself, right, what kinds of questions, right, are new questions that you can answer that nobody else has been able to answer so far, right? How do you do the things that will change the way that you work as an organization, right? And then once you know that, right, the next question is, so what, right? If I told you, right, and I had this conversation again with somebody on the credit cards, and I said, if I could tell you the next 10,000 people that are not going to pay their credit card bill, what would you do? Right? They're not going to pay. And the answer is, well, I can't do anything. They're current on their bill. And the same question is true. But wouldn't you call them and ask them, has anything changed in your life? Wouldn't you change their credit limit? Wouldn't you make an adjustment? So the answer has to be, so what? If I know this, then what? Right? That is the challenge for you guys, right? As you engage in data, as you come out into the careers in the world, is to take what you learn with data and do something with it. If you can do something with it in an automated way, that's great. Sometimes it's a policy change. Sometimes it requires government action, right? One of the situations we found out, the government was incentivizing and handing out an incentive to people, and it changed their behavior, and it was causing the people to have problems paying their bills. So as you get into these scenarios, right, as we talk to banks, or we talk to utility companies, or we talk to automotive manufacturers, the problems are all different. They all come down to what are you going to do differently once you know this information, right? And then, so we go for a little bit further, right? The next question then is agility, right? How are you going to now react as an organization, and can you react faster than your next competitor? And that's one of the things that we try to do with our customers, is give them a platform so that it's easy for them to react, right? That they're easy to add one more thing and do something new, right? If you treat every problem as an individual problem, then the next problem looks like a new individual problem. But if you begin to bring the data together and stitch it together to create a good vision, right? Sometimes customers, they call it customer 360, right? Or supplier 360. That holistic view, and if you augment it with behavior, you augment it with credit scoring models or risk models, those things now allow us to, when we add one more piece of information, there's many, many new stories we can tell, right? And that's one of these that I think is really, really key. So we find that focusing on repeatability, if you can do a project once with data, that's great. If you can do that project 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, well, that's when value gets generated at a very, very low cost, right? And so, you know, our vision here is you're either going to be disrupted, right? Or you are the disruptor, right? And so the data, we think, is one of the key things that's causing the disruption. It's not the only thing, right? There's changes in government, there's changes in payment systems, there's lots of other things that are happening. But data is clearly one of them. And artificial intelligence, machine learning, these are the new tools we never had before. So now we've been able to bring the data together, we've been able to report on it, we're able to analyze it, but now we're able to tease out these patterns. We're able to sit down and say, you know what, I think I can learn from this, and we can build systems that learn based on the data. We had one customer in Europe that made pesticides, right? They made actually fungicides for plants. So when a farmer had a problem with his plant, he could take a photo on his cell phone. The photo would be uploaded, the image analytics would determine what kind of fungal infection it was, and then offer the farmer, here's the fungicide, would you like me to ship it to you? Well, that's an interesting application. But what went on next is they said, what if we could take the weather data and add that in? Now the weather data says, I know which way the wind is blowing. So if the fungus is in this customer's field, and I know his GPS location because he had his geotagging turned on in the photo that he sent me, I now know that in 3 days, this next farmer over here is going to see that fungus blowing into his field. Let me contact that or that farmer and offer him the same fungicide. And people said, "Ooh, that's interesting, right? You'll stop it. You could actually potentially, if you get enough farmers treating the fields at the right time, you could stop that wave blowing through and actually fix the problem where you've never been able to fix it before." And then somebody said, "Oh, well, we won't sell as much fungicide, right? If we stop the problem, we shouldn't stop the problem. We shouldn't warn the next farmer until he has the problem." And the company said, "No, that's not right. We need to stop this problem. This is a fundamental issue. This is why we're in business. We sell these fungicides to fix the underlying problem." And what they found was the farmers were so happy with their service that the brand awareness became very high. They sold more tractors. They may not have sold as much fungicide, but they sold so many other products. They had a huge revenue lift in the rest of the company. These are the stories, right, that change how we do business, right? And when executives hear this, these are the things that they say, I want to be one of those disruptors, right? I want to change how farmers do business.
Okay, but if you stop or be disrupted, you can choose this one. Mana yang Anda pilih gitu. Okay.
There's lots of more material.
Okay, so kawan-kawan semuanya, jadi ada juga we can intermezzo with your merchandise maybe. Yes.
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Ada beberapa merchandise ya from Mr. Jackson, Chris ya. Tepuk tangan dulu. Ada beberapa. So maybe may I ask the question to you? Okay. Silakan lemparkan pertanyaan. Wah, First, instruktur kita mungkin terlebih dahulu Pak Dr. Zaini. Dan at the first, kami pertama silakan Bapak Dr. Zaini, kita silakan ambil tempat di tengah ini. Kemudian setelah itu siapa dari student sebelah kiri yang pakai kacamata, satu lagi sebelah kanan yang di tengah. Oke. At the first silakan. Jangan lupa perkenalkan diri, introduce yourself, please.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum.
I want to ask you a simple question regarding our net company, Garuda. Maybe in 5 years ago, it's a company, but now we see in the internet, the company problem with the financial or maybe service. In few weeks ago, we heard about someone who complained about the minorities in the plan, and I think it's the image for the company. So I want to ask you a question: how we can help the company by using your technology in order to get survive in the competing airlines. Okay. You understand?
We hope a lot of the airlines, right? We have big customers, and we'll see one of the examples we'll bring up in just a few minutes is KLM and Air France. I can share with you a little bit about how they're using our technology. I worked specifically, one of the accounts that I supported was Qantas Airlines, right, years ago, and we helped them actually bring together their financial systems so that they could actually see what was happening. They have a vision of their whole, visibility of their whole system. Airlines are very, very complex organizations, and they're required to operate at very high levels of quality. The data must be near perfect, right? Particularly the maintenance data, right? Because they're using serialized parts, they care about not making any mistakes. And so one of the things that we saw, and I'll give you an example, it's not necessarily an airline, but is the US Air Force. When there was activity in Iraq, they had to fly in Apache helicopters, right? And the problem with the Apache helicopters were in the sandy conditions, they broke down. The average breakdown took 11 days to repair. There's no place, you can't just go up and find an Apache helicopter part. So they actually had to fly in a whole squadron of helicopters to use as spare parts. So they flew them in, and they took them apart to cannibalize those pieces to use on the other helicopters. When we started to do what we call condition-based maintenance, we're able to predict out based on the actual wear and tear that the engineers observe on the part when that part should be inspected next, and we can do predictive kind of an analysis. That condition-based maintenance allowed us to take the conditions from 11 days average down to half a day, right? And allowed us to stop one accident per year that cost the failure of an entire Apache helicopter and the loss of its crew, right? So that's real money. That's $6 million per helicopter and 3 human lives, right? That can be saved through data.
Okay.
I don't know if that answered your question, but
Any flashback Pak Zaini?
perhaps I'll follow up afterwards, right? So our customers here in Indonesia are banks. We also work in the telephone industry, the wireless industry, and we have customers in the government, right? Elsewhere around the world, we're involved in the large retailers, the large manufacturers. You'll see us in things like Siemens uses us to help improve their trains on-time performance. many different industries, but in Indonesia we have a relatively small footprint today. Hopefully it'll be larger in the future.
Oke, upload sekali lagi di buat presenter. Ya sebenarnya mau ditampung dulu, we collect the question. Tapi nyocek tembak cek latih dia nyawa kan. Oke. Let's continue the question. Oke, silakan pertanyaannya. Nama, perkenalan. Yang tadi ya, dua lagi. Kita selesaikan dulu yang kali ini. Ya jangan lupa panitia nanti didatangi ada mereka.
Okay, hello, my name is Adli. I am one of the student
Mau
from...
diulangi? Your name please.
Okay, my name is Adli, A-D-L-I. I'm one of the student from Artificial Intelligence class in class A. So, as far as I know, in Indonesia, in these past 5 years, there are so much improvement, especially in e-commerce and also in our daily life application of artificial intelligence, such as Google, YouTube, and also transportation like Gojek and Grab, and also Bukalapak and other brands also. But as far as I know, there are not much improvement in science and also chemistry. So my question is, it's also related to your topic before. You talked about the fungus and also the disaster that happened and implemented in Europe. But I don't think there is such plan implemented in Indonesia. My question is, what do you think and how do you see the improvement of artificial intelligence application in the next 5 years, especially in science and also in chemistry, especially in our country? Thank you.
Terima kasih, thank you. Akli, peserta member of the participan Digital Scholarship. Oke, next Akli barisan.
Hello, sir. My name is Agustus, and I'm actually from computer engineering. So I'm going to ask you a little bit question. So it's about like artificial intelligence. So there's actually artificial intelligence means like a really huge impact for human beings, like a world or something like that. So I'm gonna ask you about a little bit question. So what's the biggest impact that artificial intelligence can do? Actually, the baddest impact. I'm actually artificial intelligence is actually been a really important thing for our lives. It's actually they can do much of a human thing. It's actually there's it's actually artificial intelligence actually can drive a car, so which means it's kind of possible there, but it is actually it's being possible now. So it's actually like in the USA, there's actually artificial intelligence can drive a car. So my question is, how do we actually resist all of this artificial intelligence? So about how is the biggest impact? The biggest impact is actually being happened into worldwide. So if actually artificial intelligence can do in the past for about 5 years. Thank you.
So, did you get it?
I think I understand. Let me just repeat the question back. You want to see what's coming in artificial. When do you think things like the AI will allow us to drive cars, to do all those things, to replace humans, right?
Oke, let's go to question again. Terima kasih dari Elsa. Silakan tepuk tangan buat para penanya. Jangan lupa dua merchandise silakan diberikan, ada buat Pak Baca ini, ada flash disk sama yang ada 3 di dalam itu. Silakan didatangi oleh panitia. Thank you.
Actually, let me flip ahead and let's.
Yes. I mean, yes. Okay.
Sort of share, right?
Maybe transition.
As we go through, one of the questions was about Air France and KLM. Excuse me. There's a video. Hello. There's a video. If you can toggle over and run the video on KLM. It's about a 2-minute video, but it will give you a sense of what they found, right? So when we talk about our customers, we talk about the answers, right? And the answer for these guys is, how do you make all of this stuff work well, right? How do you pull all the airline together? So see if you can run that video now.
Yeah.
So there's one over there. You can switch over to this. Go back. We don't want the sled back one. We want the, go back.
Go back.
And there's one on KLM Air France. Do you see it? Is the fourth one down. From booking to baggage. Next one up. Just click on it. The internet.
Agustus and KLM, that means that they get in the countries and with more than with the number of customer we need to tax, we need to I want us to be more focused on kind of legal data, especially with regard to GDPR, privacy by design. So we know what are the different experiences the customer has had, when checking board, aircraft, and ride, if we gather all this data all together, we're able to draw some specific path on a specific process, linking, for instance, this navigation with the call in our web support. What is really new for us is an enabler in evaluating exactly the magnitude of this problem. And through advanced analytics, we're able to follow up the behavior of customers that face these kind of issues. The biggest value in using Teradata platform for analytics is benefiting from, I would say, built-in optimization in a sense that is robust enough to scale up at a very high level. And on top of that, we want to go into machine learning, we want to go into advanced analytics, and that will make us choose the advantage of the business.
So the key here for KLM and Air France is that they're looking at the customer behavior. So a customer books a ticket on a website, and there's a log that's generated of their activity. Which things did they click on? Which places did they click at? What routes did they investigate? What caused them at the end to actually book that trip? Then when they go to check in, right, or when they contact a customer service agent, or when their baggage is delayed, right, they need to be able to stitch these together because they'll sit down and say, when is this customer likely to come back? Will this customer, do they have a good experience with us or not, right? That only happens when you can not only collect the data, but bring it together and analyze it. Now they want to go a step further, and they want to apply things like learning from it, right? So they can begin to apply the new algorithms against it to be able to go a step beyond and get to where they can prevent some of those activities from happening, right? When they see these things, they can warn you in advance, right? Send you a text message, your flight is delayed, right? You're going to have a problem. There was a problem with your baggage. We've already dealt with it, we've identified with it, it'll be, here's how we're mitigating it, right?
Okay. Baik, what about the question?
So the next question was around chemistry and health and life sciences and those things. This is an area where Teradata plays only in one sort of area, one part of that, and that is in the big pharma space. We help the companies manage distribution, production, right, that kind of data. We're not heavily involved in the life science data, the modeling of molecules or proteins. That is a different area of artificial intelligence, a different area where these techniques are being applied. So we're not in the drug discovery business or the protein, mapping and folding of molecules. So it's not an area that I have any expertise on. It is clearly an area where data is going to make a huge difference, right? But it's much more mathematical in nature, right? And it tends to be more sort of pure research driven rather than operational activity, right? We're more geared around the kinds of things that businesses do to operate and run, rather than the discovery of a new drug or how you might model a protein, right? And I think the last question was about the sort of the future of AI, and actually, yeah, what's coming. Let's see if I can switch ahead here. Click on the slide again, maybe one more time. Just a second. Just click ahead here. Click on the slide somewhere. It's still focused on the video. Can you switch? Click on the slide. There's somewhere on the slide. Just click on the slide itself.
Next.
Next. So, this one's going to be a little hard to see, but it's something that you guys can take a look at a little bit later. This is a scientific study that was done, a paper that was published not too long ago, that talks about when will AI likely be able to replace humans, right? And so you can actually go read the research yourself, but it's kind of curious, right? If you look and say, when is AI going to be able to learn how to play Angry Birds better than a human? And we're right about there right now, right? You could apply technology, so they're learning how to play Go, they're learning how to play chess. All of these games, right, we're beginning to see the technology come out there. It's a completely different question to say, can I replace a surgeon who's doing surgery, right? Can I replace a doctor for diagnoses? We're beginning to see in certain places like skin cancer detection, where the artificial intelligence, right, the learning algorithms is able to detect conditions that the best pathologists cannot, right? And when the false positive rates start to fall, you're going to be seeing this technology. So what this is essentially saying is in the next 30, 40, 50 years, you're going to see machine alternatives to people in just about every major category of job. So in your lifetime, you can expect to see computers able to do most of what you do as well as what you do, as you do. By 100 years from now, you can expect that computers can do it all, right? So when we talk about artificial intelligence, we talk about machine learning, what we're not talking about is a computer that thinks on its own, right? That's sentience, right? We're talking about a computer that can do a job, right? Today, if you had a security guard who had to monitor 10 different cameras and watch for a problem, right? He can look at this camera, look at that camera, look at that camera. Oh, there's a safety problem here. Oh, there's a security problem on this one. I see somebody playing with a lock, right? Can a computer do that job? Absolutely, right? Because all it needs is a few screens, right? And look at that and compare the image and say, is anything happening? Oh, there's something happening. What kind of activity is happening? We can do that. We can replace a security guard today. We can't replace a surgeon, right? But I believe people are working on it.
Okay, tepuk tangan. Jadi semuanya bisa, mau ngapain aja bisa. Dan kalau ada waktu bisa gitu ya. Oke, baik. Let's get
Do you want to see some more of the material and see if there are some other questions? Right? I've been available for questions afterwards as well. So I know there's a lot of you and those things. Maybe it would be good to show some of the other things, right? So, when we talk about analytics, right, we talk about sort of three major areas, right? The prescriptive, the descriptive, and the predictive, right? Descriptive analytics is where most of the industry has been focused on for a long time. Can I tell you what's happened? What's already happened today, right? What I really want to be able to tell you is what's going to happen in the future, right? How do I get to prediction? One of the things we're finding is that rules-based engines have a hard time predicting the future because they have very specific criteria. And we can't write enough rules that work reliably well enough to capture every exception condition, right? But learning algorithms work a different way. They say, show me this data, and I can now infer, when I see something I've never encountered before, what it looks like. And I begin to categorize it as I see it enough, right? And the big example of this is the image recognition, right? If I show it a pose of 10,000 dogs, and I show another 10,000 cats, what does it do when it sees a horse? Does a horse look like a cat? No, it's clearly not a cat, but it might be a dog, right? But if you show me 10,000 pictures of horses, I can clearly now categorize the next horse I see as a horse, right? I have enough learning material.
Yeah, that's the
So where we see a lot of our technology going, right, is that the practical uses of this stuff, right, in the companies today, because you look and say, the techniques that are coming out of artificial intelligence, many of these techniques were discovered 20 or 30 years ago, and are just now becoming into practical applications. But we're seeing today that there is a tremendous amount of activity in manufacturing, right? The way that manufacturing is being done, the way quality control is being done, these connected vehicles, right? The replacing of things, anything that's around image processing is moving very, very rapidly. Voice recognition, I use Google Translate all the time, right? Google Translate is an amazing piece of work because it uses statistics to translate from one language to another. It's not rules, right? The rules programs that Google had written before they had Google Translate were 500,000 lines of code trying to translate from one language to another. You cannot encode grammar perfectly. But they got much higher success rates, and they're still not perfect, right? But they're getting better, right? Every day, because they get to see how people are translating and using things. The important piece is the feedback loop, right? If you know whether the algorithm is producing a good result, then you have to give that information back to the algorithms. There will be new algorithms, right? We know that's coming. So we see there's lots and lots of places to do this. From our product perspective, what we see the key issue for us is not whether you can create a new algorithm or not. It's can you apply it at scale, right? So one of the examples that I like to use with my customers, right, is if you imagine a call center, right? Customers are calling support and they're complaining. Most of the calls you get in a call center are complaining. It could be I need help, I need service, but most of them are complaints. So the manager of the call center says, I would like to know whether my customer service representative, the agent, is making this customer happier or more upset by the end of the call, right? So a real world example, one of our customers operates 36 call centers in 20 countries, right? That's a lot of call centers. They're getting 20,000 calls a day. The calls average 3 minutes in length. They would like to know, at the end of the day, is the customer happier? So the technique to do it is pretty straightforward. Produce a transcript of the call, translate those to English, right, or a common language, use a dictionary of positive words and negative words, have a machine learning algorithm that learns other words that are positive or negative based on the ones, right, that you identify. Have a good training data set, right, where you clearly identify these are happy customers, these are unhappy customers. You need to put all these together. You can build out that training algorithms. You can also do sentiment analysis on the voice wave. Are there stress tones in the voice? Or is somebody, thank you very much, right? Slamming the phone down was a sarcastic comment, right? But you can tell from the stress of the voice that person was upset still at the end of the call. So we can do an analysis of the last 30 seconds versus the first 30 seconds of the call, right? And determine did the voice stress change. From those we can generate a score. The score itself can be used to now determine who is upset or not. Now the question is, I get 20,000 calls a day. How do I answer that question every day and produce the reports? Because I want to correlate that with How many calls did this agent take? Maybe they're working too long and they need another break, right? And they're being mean to the customer because they're tired, right? Maybe I have a problem with my product and every customer is not going to be satisfied with the result. Maybe I need better solutions, right? There could be all kinds of reasons besides the representative just not doing the job well, right? But until you know and you can correlate it with the rest of the data that you might have in your CRM system or other kind of solution, you can't do that. So what we need is a score, and I need that score every day. Teradata provides a platform that can do that kind of analysis reliably at scale and meet your service level agreements. The agreement that IT has with the business to say, every morning by 8 a.m., there'll be this data ready for you from the prior day, right? Or in real time, as it happens, here's the calls that are happening in this 10-minute clock. Here's how agents are doing compared to each other, right? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Oke, plus sekali lagi. Jadi hadirin sekalian, ini luar biasa dari yang disampaikan Mr. Chris Jackson. Kita bisa explore lagi. Maybe collect this question. Oke, sebelah ini yang pakai kacamata di depan ya. Terus ya dari Bapak Dokter Rian. Satu lagi yang di tengah pakai jilbab. Oke, silakan. Three persons. Perkenalkan diri jangan lupa.
Baiklah, perkenalkan nama saya Dora dari Sistem Informasi.
Oke.
My first question, what is different between data scientist and data analytic? And second question, ini dalam bahasa Indonesia aja Pak?
Sorry, data scientist with?
Data analytic.
Oh yes, oke.
Jadi saya pernah baca buku tentang analitik dari Google. Jadi mereka melakukan penelitian, meneliti data-data yang mereka dapatkan dari search engine mereka. Dan mereka dapatkan, dia bisa memprediksi presiden terpilih di periode berikutnya di Amerika. Ketika kita menggunakan search engine seperti Google, ketika kita mencari data, itu kan di-record oleh perusahaan mereka. Tetapi ketika merecord ini, data ini bisa menjadi bahwa itu data yang memang mereka sukai atau memang tidak mereka sukai. Contohnya, saya menyukai objek A, saya mencari tentang objek A di search engine. Kemudian saya membenci objek B, saya mencari tentang objek B, tapi karena saya benci objek B tersebut. Jadi bagaimana cara orang analitik untuk menentukan data ini memang disukai atau tidak disukai oleh user ini? Terima kasih.
Okay, profiling like and dislike person, how data analytics do that? Okay.
All right. So let me answer this too, then before we flip the other two.
Okay, yes, okay. Jadi sesuai itu ada di Universitas baca Latin. Okay, please.
Small memory, it's getting old. So the difference between a data scientist and a data analyst, right? When we look at a data analyst is somebody who comes in and understands the structure of data, the relationships of data, and its meaning, right? They can manipulate data. We often would call those folks a data engineer, right? The term that you'll hear around data science is often data wrangler, right? It's kind of a strange term. A wrangler is somebody who manipulates the data and gets it ready for the analytics to happen. The scientist is the one who determines that this data should be run through these various statistical techniques. They are doing exploration. So a scientist has a hypothesis, right? I believe this to be true. Let me test the data to see if it actually is, right? So we ask questions and we attempt to approve or disprove hypotheses. If those turn out to be true, they may lead to the next question, right? Sometimes we learn things by proving things are not what we thought, right? So we have a whole methodology we use for doing this kind of discovery, where we can take a business question and say, we think this is true. Does the data actually support it? Right? And so that's the difference then between those two. One is geared around managing the data. The other is geared around asking questions of the data itself. Right? That's how we typically distinguish.
So the skill set is different.
The skill set is overlapping for sure, and there's no reason why you can't be both, right? That's definitely possible. There are people out there that do both. The data scientist will tend to have much more statistical background, right? They'll have a training and they'll understand k-means and they'll understand all of the various terms that you're going to use to cluster data, segment, right? Those techniques. The application of the algorithms, right? The programming and the preparation of the data tends to be a different skill set, right? Often we team those people together into a small group of 2 or 3 or 4 people that work together because they provide complementary skill sets. Right? We often add a domain expert, right? A subject matter expert who understands the process of how that data was generated or how it's used today or the field in which that data relates, because the data scientist may not have any actual understanding of the meaning or the content. They understand the technique of manipulating. The analyst understands the technique of getting the data ready, right?
So which one? The best or is this thing? That scientist or data analyst?
You can't do one without the other, right? What we find is that we can share those domain experts, right? They are the highest value people. If you have expertise in a business, line of business, and a way of doing business, you are valuable for many things, right? Not just data analytics, you're valuable for process improvement, right? For running a business, for doing all the different cost aspects. That is the highest value position. The next highest value, and probably the #1 hottest job on the planet right now, is data scientist. Okay? That is the job that everybody is looking for. I talk to customers, and some of them have 1,000 data scientists working for them. And I ask them, how many of those data scientists actually produced a result for you that changed your business?
So yes,
and it might be 5. Okay? Literally, it's very, very small. Most of these data scientists can produce only studies. They write papers, they produce an interesting PowerPoint, they might do something. The ones that actually can figure out how to build applications and go beyond that to the decisioning side, those are the most valuable data scientists. So the ones that we look for in our business, the ones I want to hire to work for me, are the ones who understand the value of the business income, the outcome that we're doing, right? And can work on how to make that automation of the decision process work at scale, right? They produce new services that leverage these findings, right? So those are the ones that I can use as consultants across many industries. The data engineers, we need lots of them, right? So as you sort of go through that pyramid, right, there's a few subject matter experts, there are more data scientists, there are many, many data engineers or data analysts, because you need lots of them, because there's lots of data and more being created all the time, right? And to manage that process, you need many, many people to help. So all of them are good jobs. They're all places you can make a career. The best data analyst might be more valuable to your business than the best data scientist, depending on what you actually do.
And more suggestions for our student, data scientists, how to go. Yeah. Any suggestions for
I think you have to follow what you enjoy. If you like statistics, and if you like math, and you like algorithms, right, then data scientist is a good job. If you like programming, right, then the machine learning and the applications of those things may be more interesting. If you're deep into the life sciences and you love chemistry, in addition to the stuff, then you're in a completely different field, right? So there's so many places you can apply these techniques, right? If you like to build applications, that's one thing. If you like to build mobile applications, be a programmer, right? You can leverage all of these techniques in any of those places. There's still plenty of jobs out there for people doing business intelligence, business analytics, building data warehouses. What we find is that most companies don't do a very good job of collecting all of the data together in one place. So there's still a ton of fabulous engineering careers to be had.
Oke, tepuk tangan. Jadi kita ikuti saja. Kita sukanya mana ya? Ya kita kuat tempatnya di mana atau di mana yang mana mau data scientist mau, tapi itu good job ya, the scientist job dan scientist itu.
Part of my presentation here, if we flip ahead, I have a day in the life of a data scientist. Would you guys like to see what that looks like? Would you guys like to see what a data scientist does with Teradata? We can do that.
Mungkin juga bisa direkrut ya, recruitment Teradata. Okay, satu.
Well, we can look at that maybe next. Let's ask 2 more questions.
Okay, and the second is profiling.
Profiling. Okay, so when we profile customers, right, the first step is to build out what you know, right? So you have to collect up data that's of sufficient quality to make a decision. So we call it fit for purpose, right? So the data may have been collected in one place, but it doesn't align with the data collected in a second system. So we have to negotiate out common definitions of data. That's the first piece. So once you create a profile of somebody, what you know about that person changes over time, right? So we start to look for events, right? So there's a profile that says, here's what I know about you, and here's what you look like in January, here's what you look like in February, here's what you look like in March, right? Here's your balance in your bank account, or here's your, you owned a car and you have 2 children. Oh, now you have 3 children. Oh, what happened? There was a life event there. You had the birth of a baby, right? If I know your age, and I know how close you are to retirement, I can sell you certain products, right? So what I'm looking for is evidence of behavior, right? Evidence of life events. I may be able to tease that out of other data. Maybe you'll tell me. If I ask the question, if I called you up and asked you, would you tell me, right, about that stuff? Would you share that with me from a marketing survey? There's many ways companies collect this information, and you share it out all the time. Think about what you're posting on Facebook or on Instagram, right? You know, Instagram knows who your friends are. They know what kind of activities you do. They know maybe your favorite color. They know whether you own a motorcycle or a car, right? Do you use Gojek or not, right? They would probably be able to tell that because you've posted photos about that, right? They know lots and lots of other things about you. Typically, the kinds of marketing data that ends up in these profiles, right? There's the direct stuff that we know about you. There's the things that we derive, and then there's the things that we recognize because we clustered you with people like you, right? So how do I fill out the things I don't know about you? If I know that you are, a 22-year-old girl who likes motorcycles and racing cars.
What about the voting election?
Right? If we get to play with elections, it's all kinds of things. But once I know that you like this, if I know all the other people who like the same things, and I know, oh, that person likes a certain brand of clothing, well, then maybe you'll like it too. And that's how we build recommendation engines, right? People like you, or people who did activity like you, or people who had events like you, or have reached the life stage that you've reached, right? These allow us to do what we call next best offer, right? What's the offer we're waiting to give you, given a trigger condition? And then we look for those triggers, right? So when we work with the banks right now, one of the scenarios we had was a bank that said, when you swipe your credit card or you use your debit card at a point of sale, right? You bought something at a Starbucks, right? We have 7 seconds to make a decision to send an offer to your cell phone before you walk away and you're too far along to turn around and go to that store over there. So if I want to offer a coupon, right, for you on your cell phone, right, we have to make that decision. If it takes 2 seconds of that 7 seconds for the transaction to reach my system, they gave us 300 milliseconds to make the decision on what offer to present. We had to know, have we presented that offer to you before already? What offer were you qualified for? Are you near where that offer is legitimately available, right? And then to actually present this system, they needed the rest of the time to route the SMS message or the WhatsApp message out, right, to actually make that offer to you. So our window of time is less than 300 milliseconds, sometimes it's 60 milliseconds, right? You must be able to make these decisions really rapidly. Now scale that up to 1,000 transactions happen in a second, right? And then you start to see why we need large-scale analytics. It also means you can't do all of that number crunching at real time. You have to do some of it in advance.
Oke, tepuk tangan buat narasumber kita. Oke, silakan Dr. Rian.
Good morning, Mr. My name is Dengan, one of the instructor for this workshop. My question is pretty simple actually. Sometimes our biggest enemy in this data science is privacy. Basically nobody want to share their data with us for free, except our family or our friend. So, my question is, is there any technique for us to make people willingly give their data for free in your 30 years of experience?
So privacy is always one of those big questions. And it's almost a religious question, right? There are people who believe that my data is my data and nobody should have the right to use it for anything unless I even give them the specific rights, right? There's the questions of opt-in, opt-out. And there's other folks who say, I don't care, right? Give me the best offer. I'd rather see an advertisement that's relevant to me than one that's not, right? If you know something about me, then you can present and share something to me. There is no simple answer, right? And as data scientists, what we have to be is to be aware of the context in which we have received this and the trust in which has been placed on us, right? So when we work with our customers, our engineers that work as consultants with our customer base are under strict guidelines, and we're very careful that we never share any customer data with anybody else. In fact, we have specific privacy controls, and there are very large penalties, right? You see the reference to GDPR that was in the KLM, right? That's a European law about privacy. It carries substantial penalties. So privacy is something you cannot ignore. On the other hand, in order to answer the questions, right, if you're asking somebody's questions about healthcare, you have to have access to the clinical data to make that assessment, right? So part of it is, are you operating within a trusted boundary? Can we give you a safe place where that data sits in a central place and it's not on your laptop necessarily, right? So a lot of our customers don't want the data leaving the system. That's the first control that they put over it. Don't extract it out and put it somewhere else. Give you the tools to manipulate where the data sits already. Because I already have it secured. I've already invested in protecting it. The second thing we do is we anonymize the data, right? So we put a specific layer on top of it that says, these are the rules by which the data must be approved in order for it to be used for data science. Do you really need to know the name of the person, or is an ID number okay? Do I even need to know their ID number, or can I generate what we call a surrogate key that replaces that ID number? And most often, if you actually take a look at what people are trying to do, the personally identifying information isn't needed. But for example, in the US, one of the things I've seen was in a postal code, if you know somebody's date of birth and the zip code, the postal code they live in, you almost can identify any individual living. And there's 350 million people in the United States. Right? Those two pieces of I don't know their name, I don't know anything, just their date of birth and what zip code they live in. Right? That's enough to come down to an individual. So we have to start saying, if you have a combination of data, is it identifying or not? And even though, so we have to protect those things. So what we work with our customers is to make sure that we have the right level of protection for the problems being asked. In terms of whether people give it away or not, that becomes to me a much more a commercial question. Right? What is your relationship? Are you getting a service of value that's sufficiently valuable for you to give it away? Your choice. there is no answer on that one. I don't know.
So,
I protect my children's data much more than I protect my own, right? I protect my data related to my financial situation much more than I protect the data about my product preferences. So I protect my healthcare data more than I protect perhaps the data around my public records, because there's other ways for them to discover data.
Okay, thank you. Itu dari Chris-nya. Oke, yang terakhir untuk sesi ini untuk maybe slide. Oke, silakan. Ini partisipan digital scholarship nih.
It's fabulous to see so many women here in this audience, right? That is one of the things that we're working really hard as a company about, is to drive the diversity up, not just the diversity across countries and languages and cultures, but to drive the participation of women at our company. This is a number one priority of our chief executive and all of us, right? So, like I said, it's really great to see so many women here.
Sebenarnya ya. Kita ucapkan selamat datang juga kepada bapak-bapak kita yang sudah hadir tadi mendampingi dari Diskominfo. Ya, oke. Next question, please. Your name, please.
Good morning. First, my name is Wirama Yusli. I'm from Industrial Engineering Andalas University. I'm a part of Big Data Analytics. I wanted to I have a question about you. What do you target your program, the future of data, analytics, machine learning, and practical application for your big company or your agency and government in Indonesia? If you wanted to choose agency or government, can you help me to so many problems in Indonesia? For example, Indonesia presidential election channel. This is so conventional about this. Bisa dikatakan kita ada pemilu yang misal itu lebih hektiknya di mana kita sampai persatuan Indonesia kita jadi terpecahkan. Can you help me to get this? What your target? If you want to target big company or your agency to the government. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Your target and how to solve the Indonesian problem, especially election.
So, as a foreigner here living in Indonesia, I have zero political opinion. All right, so that's one thing to be careful, right? That Indonesians need to make the best choices for Indonesia's future, right? And I want nothing but the best for Indonesia. That being said, our goal is to help, as a company, is to help the government get the most out of its potential future. So in the government, we're involved in the Ministry of Finance, and we're specifically involved in looking in the tax kind of data. So that's the area that we're working with as a customer base. And we're helping to fight fraud, we're helping with intelligence, we're helping to drive up collections, we're helping to change the way that Indonesia deals with its tax base, which is fundamental to generating the revenue that you guys need to be able to invest back into the people. So my goal from a business perspective is to help Indonesian government do more, right? So we're talking now with folks who are involved in the smart city, right? We're talking with folks who are involved in some of the provincial governments. We are always looking at the future. In other places around the world, we work with the large social programs. So we're involved in anywhere where there are subsidies being handed out, benefits being distributed, taxes being collected, the business and workings of government that are at scale, right? Pension systems we're involved in. And so it depends around the world what we do. So the answer that I have for you is Indonesians fundamentally must solve Indonesia's problems, right? Or to build a future for Indonesia. There are plenty of places where we help facilitate interaction, government to government, right? And share learnings across cultures, right? So we've specifically in the tax solutions that we're working with in Indonesia, Indonesia has a partnership with Australia, right? And Australia Tax Office is also a customer. And so we're involved in some of the sharing there so that they can learn from each other. So I think that's really important. Our target from a customer base is we look at and sell only to the largest organizations, right? That means the biggest retailers, the biggest manufacturers, the biggest banks. The reason is we have limited resources for sales. And so in order for us to go in and invest direct people, to have direct contact, we only can attack so many companies at a time. So there's plenty more in Indonesia we would love to be talking to, but the reality is our goal is to enable other Indonesian companies to be able to take our technology and solve those problems themselves. So one of my goals over the next year or two is to actually enable 2 or 3 large companies in Indonesia to be able to service the Indonesia market independent of us, right? But using our technology as the basis for that, right? And again, sharing the learnings that we have globally.
Oke, tepuk tangan buat Mr. Chris. Kita lanjutkan saja karena masih banyak penanya ya. Oke, yang di depan. Jadi langsung aja silakan ambil posisi, tanya, perkenalkan diri.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Good morning, Mr. I'm Teradata Salvera. I'm one of participants in Digital Talent Scholarship 2019. Okay, in this session, I want to ask you some questions. The first, could you tell us what you first step when you want to start your career in Teradata? And then, in your process, what is your bigger challenge and how to solve all of your problems? This is for me. Thank you. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Oke, tepuk tangan.
So when we look to hire individuals, Teradata is engaged typically with customers that are looking for experts. Right? That means that the average person who's working in our consulting teams or working in our engineering teams has 15 to 25 years of experience, right? Because that's the profile and the nature of our engagement. But if you look at the data and analytics industry, it covers a whole spectrum. Everybody has to start somewhere, right? And getting your first opportunity is a really critical thing. One of the things we're doing now is going back and looking at our own internal processes and saying, why don't we have more younger faces in the company, right? And it's part of our diversity, it's part of our growth. We have some, right? There are folks that have started straight out of university and they've only worked for Teradata for 20, 25 years, right? There are many other folks who've come through somewhere else, right? So a company, a manufacturer of technology like Teradata isn't necessarily the place you start a career, right? What we encourage most of the folks when I talk to universities is find yourself a company who has a data problem, a government who has a data problem, or an opportunity, or look at a startup, right? There's plenty of places and hundreds of ideas about businesses you can start around data, and I'm happy to have those kind of discussions. I love to support startups and those things. But if you get involved in an organization that has data, right, then you have enough to work on. You have some task or activity. That's the best way to get started. Unfortunately, right, it's not easy to necessarily break into those companies, right? Big companies are hard to hire from, and so that's one of the places that, you know, I think still requires more work. The easiest thing is be visible, right? Get out and get involved, right? Get involved in organizations. meet people, and those people will introduce you. I think Indonesia has a lot of really incredible startups. We heard some of them mentioned earlier, right? Tokopedia, Gojek, right? All of these organizations, they are hiring significant numbers of data and data scientists. They value data and they built their business on an application, built their business on the cloud. They don't carry the baggage of lots of these other organizations that exist. It's one of the reasons they're so disruptive. They don't carry the cost of operations or the old way of doing things. They value data and they're investing in data on a continuous basis. Those are great organizations. And in fact, we have many former Teradata employees who are now working in those organizations, right? So LinkedIn is a fabulous place. At the end of this, the slide deck, you'll see, or I think it's on our contact page at the beginning, you'll see my LinkedIn address. Feel free to connect with me. Right? I'm connected to lots of other people here in Indonesia, but in other places. Right? And I think it's worth looking both in Indonesia and outside. Right? Indonesia, there's a lot of talent that's here in this country, and it's good for it to be here, but it's also good to get the experience in the rest of Asia. Asia is much more integrated, and it's a good place to if you get a chance to work in Singapore, or Hong Kong, or Australia, or any of these other places, that experience will be invaluable when you come back to Indonesia.
So, about your big challenge, your brain, maybe, yes.
My big challenge?
Yeah.
So, my biggest challenge right now in the organization is managing across 4 time zones. So I have engineers who work in Pakistan, in India, and in Korea, as well as here in Indonesia. Every one of those locations has a different culture, right? Has a different way of doing business, and in some of the places we encounter, particularly the selling side, there's a technique called a reverse auction. It's my nemesis. The reverse auction is what I hate. What it essentially means is, as a company goes through and decides what technology it needs, what problem it's going to solve, they agree on a solution. They may hold a public tender. 2 or 3 companies will come in with solutions, ours and our competitors, right? And at the end, they'll say, this one's good, this one's good, I really like this one, right? But they're all good enough, I could work with any of them. Let's go to an auction and see who gives me the lowest price. And all of a sudden, the things that made ours special or really good for the future become a commodity. And it now goes to whoever has the lowest price, right? And we don't sell on price, we sell on value, right? And so I have to create all of this effort to go for something that eventually is going to go to a price war. That bothers me a lot. And it's endemic, not so much here in Indonesia, but in countries like India. That is the way they do business. So that's my number. It's the reverse auction. If you were selling commodities, then you don't think. If you're buying 1,000 printers or 1,000,000 computers, that's one thing. We don't sell computers, we sell solutions.
Oke, jadi udah tahu ya beliau ini kira-kira nationality-nya apa? Hah? Udah dikepoin belum? Pak Deka kasih tahu. Ya, buat pertanyaan merchandise saja ya nanti ya. Oke, sudah panitia agak dicetat ya. Yang tadi sudah ya. Kita lanjutkan. Pak Deka mau nanya tadi atau oke, yang di depannya dari tadi. Ya, please. Everybody want to see some questions? Ya, silakan.
Oke, bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
So, my name is Ika. I'm a new lecturer here in FAE faculty. So, I read a book titled Data versus Democracy, and one of the contents said that like this. So, if we search a photo on a search engine, like for example we search a professor, and then the search engine will show something stereotype. like a professor with white hair, and then a man, and then with glasses, and then if we search like a doctor, and then it will show like white, what do you call it, white gum things, and most of them are professor with men and doctor also men. But in fact, a lot of professors also women, a lot of doctor also women. So it only shows the generalization, something like that. So only the stereotype. So my question is, to what extent can we trust the data? I mean, if we only see on that search engine, we only believe that professors are all men, doctors are all men, for example, or teacher with the chalkboard, while now we don't have any chalkboard. Yeah, we only have whiteboard or something like that. So, to what extent can we trust the data? Thank you.
So I think that's an excellent question, right? How do we trust the data itself? How do we know that the decisions that we're going to automate and enforce, right, are good decisions and the right decisions to be made? So what you're talking about is bias, right? Bias can exist in the training data sets that we use for these algorithms. If we provide a training data set that's skewed, right? For example, you've only provided photos of men, then the learning algorithms are going to reinforce that, right? And so it's part of the function of the folks who are setting these up is to always watch for that. We won't be able to catch it every time, but we have to be sensitive to it, and we have to measure it, and we have to look for it. I saw recently that IBM was doing a lot of really interesting research in this area, coming up with some products that actually will do things like detect bias coming out of the output of algorithms. So part of it is we actually have to go back and measure what's happening. The other thing is that we know that the models that are used behind these things, for things like risk scoring. So if we score risk and there's a bias in the risk model, right? They might cause us to sit down and say, well, we'll charge you a higher interest rate, or we won't offer a loan to you, but we'll offer it to somebody else, right? That kind of bias is something we have to really watch out for. But we know that the models age about 6 months. After 6 months, you must retrain the model anyway. Some models don't even last that long. Some will last a little longer. But almost every model doesn't go beyond that. And so what we need to make sure is that every time we go through the retraining exercise, we're not reinforcing what we already know, but we're extending and expanding the training data set. And we're incorporating that feedback, right? That will help us avoid it. But the only way to do it is to put it into your science, right? You must measure it, you must think about it, you must be aware of it, and you must not forget about it downstream.
Okay. So how the data is correct?
So if I ask you, what color is your jacket? What would you tell me? Green. But is that lime green or is that dark green, right? So as my jacket, well, is my jacket black? Is that light black or dark black? To be distinguished, right? No, we call a lighter black a gray, right? So there are lots and lots of synonyms for things, right? There's a lot of inexactness in this world. So when we have data, and you say, is this data right or wrong, you're measuring it to a standard. That standard is something that is either a very hard line, or it's a threshold, or it's relative, right? So what we ask is fit for purpose. Is the data of sufficient quality that I can use it for what I want to do? If my job is marketing, 70-80% may be okay. If my job is running an airline and doing maintenance on parts, I'm looking for 6 sigma, right? I want 6 standard deviations from the mean, and I really want 7, right? I don't really want to be, airlines running about 6.5 to almost 7 sigma, right? If they're not, they're falling out of the sky. As we scale up the number of airlines that are flying, the number of airplanes that are in the air, we don't want to have an accident every day. So we have to continue to work on the quality of the data that's there, because it matters. Do you think baggage handling is run at the same standard as airline engine maintenance? It's not. We lose more bags than we lose engines. Right? That's the difference we did call it. Fit for purpose. Right? How much are we willing to invest? Because there's a curve there, and it gets increasingly more expensive to engineer more quality in. So we ask our customers, engineer it early in the process. Put the constraints in. Don't give a free-form access, right? Put in lists of values, right? Put in the things that you can put in. So you put those constraints in as early in the process as you can.
Oke, tepuk tangan sekali lagi buat Mr. Chris. Oke, dari nunjuk. Silakan. Okay.
Let's ask one more question. It's fine.
Yes.
I want to talk to you a little bit about what we're doing and what's coming.
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's say this one.
My name is Saida Nur. I'm one of students.
You like?
My name is Saida Nur, and I'm a student of Big Data Analytics. I would like to ask about we should not let side about SWOT of Teradata, because not only us know about Teradata, and we rarely to hear about Teradata than Big Data. And I would like to ask about what is the weakness of Teradata for us to aware about it in the future or thank you.
So the big data is a term that showed up about 5 or 8 years ago or so. And it describes something where it says we have a lot more data to deal with than we ever had before. And it's not all structured data. It's not all sitting in a formal record type. It could be a document, it could be an audio file, it could be a video, it could be an image, it could be many, many different things. So when we talk about big data, what we're talking about is a lot of data from a lot of different sources. When Teradata's specialty has been dealing with the structured data. So we sit in that space that said, we know how to take all of your data from your existing systems and integrate it together to be able to use it to create new value, to drive applications, to drive decision making, to run business intelligence tools. In the big data world, there are many, many problem sets to be solved. Teradata still sits in that primarily structured data. But what we're finding is that people are using the unstructured data and producing new structures out of it. So for example, if I have, one of the problems I was hearing about before was, we had a power company in Europe that did power transmission, right? So they're moving large amounts of power from city to city, from big generating facilities to the consumers downstream. And they were having problems with failures, right? They knew that the stuff wasn't working well. And so they said, how do we figure out what's wrong with our equipment? Where are the failures happening? Right? What are the conditions that are leading to that failure? And it turns out, right, that they were seeing lots and lots of failures of these power transformers that were in the middle. And the transformers are expensive. They cost hundreds of thousands of euros to replace. Right? They're not cheap. But they couldn't figure out why the transformers were failing. And so they went back and they looked at the engineering logs, right? Every one of those repairs, every time an engineer visited, he sat down and he wrote out notes. And those notes were typed into a document. And and they had 100,000 of these documents. And they started to figure out which words were near the words. So when he was working on a transformer, what was he working on? And he found out that they were often working on the fans that cooled the transformer. And when the fans failed, 3 days later, the transformers failed. They got too hot and they overheated and they died. And all of a sudden, a repair for something that was a very inexpensive repair became very expensive. The only way to find that data was to mine the text, right? So when they found that, at the end, you can't deal with 100,000 documents, but you can figure out that there are certain key words, and those key words generate structure. And once we have a structure, we know which words are near whichever words, and how often that occurs. That now has generated a record, and we can now analyze that record, and it becomes something that we can now tie with the other structured data that we have. So that's the space that Teradata plays in. We play in the linkage between structured data and unstructured data. And we play in the space, we're not going to be the place that you're going to do your video analysis. There's plenty of other technologies for that. But we may take something where you say, I identified this person in this video, or this product. I had one customer tell me recently, I want you to scan Facebook and tell me everywhere that my motorcycles appear. Tell me everything about everybody who does that. Okay, well that's interesting. Build a customer profile, build a product profile. But I don't want to deal with the images. The images I can process better in other technologies. But the ones that have motorcycles in them, I can tell you those ones, and I can tell you what profiles associated with them. And also that's structured data. So that's where we play, is that interface to that space. Hope that answers the question.
Jadi Teradata bisa ya membuat profil orang siapa. Okay, yes.
So Teradata sits in a kind of an unusual place, right? Because we have in a typical environment people that are running what we call an analytic ecosystem. They don't depend only on Teradata for analytics. It's a combination of technologies, right? Often it's very different from one customer to another customer. It might look different if you're running in the cloud versus running systems that are on-premise. What we find is that people want to do the analytics near where the data sits. So if you're a company and your operating system is in the cloud, you're likely to be doing your analytics in the cloud. If your systems are running on-premise, you're going to do your analytics on-premise, right? What we try to do is minimize the movement of data. Once we've stitched the data together and we've added some value, we call that process curation, right? That process of modeling and curating the data, we only want to do one time. And we want to then make it accessible to lots and lots of people. Ideally, where it sits, without having to pull it out and copy it and send it somewhere else. Anytime you move data, right, you then now have a potential for it to fail. So what we have today in our product is a core database, right? That's our SQL engine. We've now added modules for machine learning and graph. Graph is a relationship type of database. It's what Facebook uses underneath the covers to be able to say who is related to who. How do I generate the wall on Facebook? That's a graph kind of database that's used there, right? So what we're doing is we're taking those algorithms and we're adding spatial data and other kinds of things like time series, so you can do analysis across many different technologies, all where the data sits, right? And we also then can connect out across the rest of the ecosystem. So if you're running a technology like Hadoop, or you're on the cloud and you have technologies like S3 or blob storage, right? Those kind of technologies, we'll be able to analyze the data in place. And so what we're going to be doing, is we're trying to change the need for you to pull that data out and do something else with it from an analytic purpose, to allow those engines to directly connect. So if you're a data scientist and you like Jupyter Notebook, we want you to be able to connect Jupyter Notebook directly to our database. If you like to analyze your data in Python, if you like to use R, we don't want you to have to take the data out of our database and run it on your small laptop. We want you to run it on our big cluster of processors where you might have 100 or 200 processors to do your work. We want you to be able to do it right there. So we want to run R directly inside the database. But our databases are massively parallel. So we know how to split that work out across many processors. So we have a set of libraries that support it. So you can directly connect Jupyter Notebook, Python, and R, and run them in database today on Teradata, right? What we're going to be doing downstream, right, is allowing that to be able to be used at scale. So what we can do is when you start to move from like a local R model to one that runs in database, you get orders of magnitude better performance, right? When you take things and you start to move them from hours, you can get them to minutes, from minutes to seconds, right? Seconds to sub-second responses. That's the engineering that we want to do, build our technology. So whether you pick our technology or ones from our competitors like Oracle or IBM or Microsoft or HP, those are competitors, they're also partners, right? Cloudera. It doesn't matter who you're dealing with in the technology space. What we encourage you to do is to think about data analytics differently and say, how do I apply it and apply it to solve big problems that require a lot of processing power to solve and can solve them cost effectively, right? And so we want to be able to solve many, many different kinds of problems, right? And then what we're going to be doing is extending out this technology to where we can directly access the data where it sits. So if the data is sitting in S3 or object storage, you'll be able to access it there, right? And where it moves, right? And we're going to be adding additional engines. So if you like Spark or you like TensorFlow for doing your AI kind of work, those applications will run directly on our platform. That's the future where we see analytics going, is whatever tools that customers want to use on whatever technology they want to use it with, but accessing our data and our data platform, whether it's on the cloud or on-premise, right? We want the flexibility and agility for organizations to make value out of it. So, okay.
Oke, tepuk tangan buat Mr. Chris. Kita punya 5 menit lagi satu sesi pertanyaan lagi barangkali kalau
The last thing I wanted to mention is, at the end of my presentation, you'll see this material about the Teradata University Network, right? The Teradata University Network is our set of materials that have been prepared professionally for academic institutions. So there's materials for professors, and there's materials for self-study. You can have direct access to this material and be able to use it to learn a variety of different techniques and to access things. There's a whole set of library of resources out there, right? There's business scenarios, there's a whole set of classware, classes built around things like sports analytics, how do you do analysis around a basketball team or whatever, right? And it's not just from our technology, it's from a number of other leading technology companies like SAS and MicroStrategy and Tableau, right? So the material is there, right? And we'll make it available to the program team here, because we don't want this to be just a one-time talk with me. We want you guys to be able to get skilled in Teradata, but in general in analytics, because anytime we do more than analytics and we see the value coming to our customers, eventually they'll come to us for a solution, right? So, in the future, we're hoping to host a competition. I know you guys have some things already planned. Maybe something that's different in Jakarta. That's one of the things I want to have a follow-up discussion on.
Oke, sekali lagi tepuk tangan yang meriah buat Mr. Chris. Oke, dua orang bertanya, 1, 2. Oke. Ya, 1, 2. Yang di bawah hitam. Ini mungkin the last ya, yang last 2 orang terakhir, karena masih ada agenda setelah ini. Silakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Gabriel. I'm from Information System Department of Andalas University. So I have one simple question for you, sir. As we know, the flow of data will be more rapid and huge in the future. So is the future techniques of is the future techniques of data processing and analytics will change or any new technique in the future? Thank you.
Diulang saja. Yang terakhir, your question is, singkat saja pertanyaannya.
Is the future technique of data processing will add or changes in the future?
So as things move forward, we know you've probably heard of Moore's law, right? Moore's law says about every 18 months we can pack twice as many transistors into the same chip. That's held true for almost 40 years, right? As that goes on, that means that computers are going to get twice as fast and about half the cost every 18 months to 2 years. We're beginning to hit some of the physical limits of how close you can pack the technology, but the technology will simply move, right? We've seen this again and again. We are nowhere near the end of what computing is going to do. So today, the computing power you have in your cell phone is greater than the entire machine that ran the White House in my first job, all right? So you can expect over the next 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, that power is going to go up by orders of magnitude. As it does, the things that we can't do today in real time will be possible in real time. So most of our customers are moving from a batch world to a real-time world. And in real time, we want to be able to do things as it happens. So instead of analyzing the phone call recording that I made and say at the end of the day, did my customer agents do well? I want to analyze the call as it happens, right? That takes a completely different level of processing power, and it takes new algorithms. We fully expect there will be new algorithms, new techniques, new technologies, and many, many more sensors, right? So the growth of sensors is going to grow. The estimates I've seen are we're going to deploy 10 times the number of sensors we have today in the next 10 years. We have coming a revolution in communications with 5G technology. 5G says we can connect 1 million devices where we have 2,000 connected today. And we can do that with almost no latency of communications and bandwidth that's 10 to 100 times faster. As soon as you do that, that means new applications are going to be written, new data is going to be created, new ways of interconnecting are going to happen. So I think it's really important that we now sort of think about we're at the beginning of this curve and not anywhere near the end. So that's where I say is focus on real time is the future of analytics.
Oke, applause yang meriah buat narasumber kita. Ya, kita catat saja, tapi sebentar ya. Dikit panitia, alhamdulillah ini sesi terakhir, mungkin dicatat aja panitia karena saya sudah dikode juga. Karena sekarang main kode-kodean, apalagi sudah terbiasa dengan Python selama 2 bulan, wah, lumayan lah ya. Baik, gitu saja barangkali. Oke, Ikhlas, thank you for this and service session in this class digital. Maybe the closest statement you can suggest something to.
Thank you very much for having me here. I appreciate the time. It's an interesting conversation. I encourage you guys to stay focused, right? Pick something and go deep, right? We look for what we call T-shaped individuals, right? They have breadth across many subjects, a basic understanding of many subjects, but they can go deep into one. Be an expert, right? Pick what makes you interested and go deep, right? Have the breadth to cover the subject area, but go deep, become an expert, and you will find a career in that expertise, right? 10,000 hours and you're an expert in
Awesome. Okay, the both hands sekali lagi. Stay expert and go deep. presentation. Saya selaku moderator Hasbi Putra mohon maaf, terima kasih, mohon maaf, thank you for your session saya di sini. Oke, terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Laporan Ketua Pelaksana oleh Fajril Akbar MSc. Kepada Bapak Fajril, disilakan.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Yang saya hormati Bapak Dr. Insinyur Edi Agustus MSc selaku Kepala Pusat Pengembangan Profesi dan Sertifikasi Balitbang SDM Kementerian Komunikasi Informatika beserta jajarannya. Yang saya hormati Bapak Dr. Andes Nizam WMM, Inspektur 3 Inspektorat Jenderal Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika beserta jajarannya. Yang saya hormati Rektor Universitas Andalas yang kali ini diwakili oleh Wakil Rektor 1 Profesor Dr. Dahrianus ABT beserta jajarannya. Yang saya hormati Bapak Ibu Kepala Dinas di lingkungan pemerintahan Provinsi Sumatera Barat dan Kota Padang beserta jajarannya. Honorable Mr. Christopher Jackson as Teradata Solution Engineering Manager South Asia and Pacific and members. Yang saya hormati Bapak Dekan Fakultas Teknologi Informasi Universitas Andalas Dr. Ahmad Safrudin Indra Priyana beserta jajarannya. Yang saya hormati Bapak Ibu Dekan dan pejabat struktural di lingkungan Universitas Andalas beserta jajarannya. Yang saya hormati Bapak dan Ibu tamu undangan yang tidak dapat saya sebutkan satu persatu. Dan yang saya banggakan peserta Digital Talent Scholarship 2019 beserta seluruh mahasiswa Universitas Andalas yang hadir di ruangan ini. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera bagi kita semua. Bersyukur kita kepada Allah dengan mengucapkan alhamdulillahirabbil alamin dan berselawat kepada Nabi junjungan kita dengan mengucapkan Allahumma sholli ala Muhammad. Bapak dan Ibu hadirin yang saya hormati, izinkan pada kesempatan yang berbahagia ini saya menyampaikan laporan kegiatan Digital Talent Scholarship 2019 yang telah berlangsung di Universitas Andalas. Program Digital Talent Scholarship ini adalah tahun kedua yang dilaksanakan oleh Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika dan tahun pertama bagi Universitas Andalas dipercaya sebagai tempat pelaksanaan program Fresh Graduate Academy dengan tema pelatihan Big Data Analytics dan Artificial Intelligence dengan kuota masing-masing 100 orang untuk per skemanya. Kemudian FGA Fresh Graduate Academy ini diprogramkan untuk diikuti oleh sarjana S1 bidang komputer, teknik dan sains. Serta kemarin diberi juga kesempatan kepada mahasiswa tahun akhir untuk ikut serta dalam kegiatan Digital Talent Scholarship tahun ini. Untuk Universitas Andalas sendiri total itu ada 196 peserta yang dinyatakan ada 100 peserta Artificial Intelligence dan 85 orang untuk peserta Big Data Analytics. Peserta berasal dari beragam daerah, di samping dari Sumatera Barat sendiri ada yang berasal dari 22 orang itu berasal dari provinsi tetangga, Provinsi Riau, 7 orang dari Jambi dan 2 orang tercatat dari Provinsi Sumatera Utara. Kemudian kegiatan ini sudah berlangsung semenjak tanggal 1 Juli sampai dengan 21 Agustus hari ini dan dimulai dengan orientasi peserta yang kita laksanakan tanggal 1 Juli 2019. Kemudian total pertemuan kelas yang kita lakukan itu ada 36 kali pertemuan kelas, mulai dari hari Senin sampai dengan Jumat, setiap minggunya dengan 4 jam pelajaran pertemuannya, dan dilaksanakan dengan 8 kelas, dan dilaksanakan semuanya di 4 labor komputer yang berada di LPTK Gedung Perpustakaan Universitas Andalas. Untuk pelatihan ini sendiri kita melibatkan kurang lebih 32 orang instruktur dan 36 instruktur pendamping yang berasal dari beragam fakultas Teknologi Informasi, Fakultas Teknik, dan FMIPA. Kemudian Bapak Ibu sekalian, izinkan juga saya menyampaikan dalam rangkaian kegiatan Digital Talent Scholarship ini kita sudah melakukan 2 kali sharing session. Sharing session yang pertama kita lakukan dengan PT Sinitra Solisindo dengan menghadirkan Ibu Evi Pohan selaku Managing Director dengan topik peran Big Data pada Revolusi Industri 4.0 di tanggal 10 Agustus 2019. Kemudian yang kedua yang kita lakukan hari ini dengan mengundang Teradata dengan pemateri Mr. Christopher Jackson selaku Teradata Solution Engineering Manager South Asia and Pacific dengan topik Digital Data Analytics, Machine Learning, and Practical Application of Artificial Intelligence. And I would like to say a lot of thanks to Mr. Christopher Jackson from Teradata to share a lot of information, knowledge, and wisdom to us today. Based on your discussion today, we just realized that how important is data science and how it plays a significant role nowadays. Kemudian kepada Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika, insya Allah Pak, Universitas Andalas melalui Fakultas Teknologi Informasi itu bersedia dan siap untuk jadi penyelenggara kegiatan DTS di tahun-tahun berikutnya. Di Bapak Ibu semua, di kesempatan ini saya ingin menyampaikan terima kasih yang mendukung penuh kegiatan ini. Kemudian terima kasih secara khusus kepada LPTK UNAN yang telah mendukung penuh dengan sumber daya yang dimiliki. Kemudian terima kasih juga kepada seluruh rekan panitia atas kerjasama dan kerja kerasnya hingga acara penutupan hari ini. Dan tidak lupa pula terima kasih serta permohonan maaf kami kepada seluruh peserta DTS jikalau dalam pelaksanaan ini masih banyak kekurangan, dan insya Allah kami kedepannya akan lebih baik. Demikian saja yang mungkin bisa saya sampaikan. Kiranya nanti mohon kesediaan Bapak Wakil Rektor 1 Universitas Andalas Profesor Dr. Daryanus untuk memberikan sambutan pada kegiatan penutupan ini, dan mohon kesediaan kepada Bapak Kepala Pusat Profesi Sertifikasi Balitbang SDM Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika untuk memberikan sambutan sekaligus menutup secara resmi kegiatan DTS di Universitas Andalas ini. Salah dan janggal saya mohon maaf pada kita semua. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Selanjutnya, kata sambutan dari Wakil Rektor 1 Universitas Andalas, Dr. Insinyur Dengan APP. Bapak disilakan.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Yang pertama marilah kita mengucapkan puji syukur kepada Allah Subhanahu wa taala atas berkat rahmatnya kita dapat hadir bersama-sama dalam malam ini. Salam dan salam marilah kita sampaikan pada junjungan kita Nabi Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Yang sama-sama kita hormati Bapak Dr. Insinyur Hedi M. Idris MSc, Kepala Pusat Pengembangan Profesi dan Sertifikasi Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika. Selamat datang di Universitas Andalas, Pak. Bapak Nizam, Metronis Nizam WMM, Inspektur 3 pada Inspektur Jenderal Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika. Bapak Wakil Rektor dan Dekan Universitas Andalas, Bapak Christopher Johnson, Teradata Solution Engineering Manager South Asia and Pacific. Welcome to Andalas University. staf dari Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika Jakarta, staf dari Balai Besar Pengembangan Sumber Daya Manusia dan Pelatihan Kominfo Medan, Kepala Bapeda, Kepala Dinas Pendidikan, dan Kepala Dinas Kominfo Kota Padang atau yang mewakili, instruktur dan asisten Digital Talent Scholarship tahun 2019, kemudian peserta DTS dan mahasiswa FTI yang kami banggakan. Selamat datang di kampus Universitas Andalas, kampus terbaik di luar Jawa. Universitas Andalas telah terbukti mempertahankan posisi sebagai kampus terbaik di luar Jawa 4 tahun berturut-turut. Kemudian kita sebagai satu-satunya PTN BLU adalah PTN yang berada pada klaster 1, sehingga agak melanggar pakem dikti. Seharusnya pas klaster 1 itu PTNBH, kita tidak, dan di bawah kita masih banyak PTNBH yang berada pada klaster 1, bahkan ada yang di klaster 2. Jadi ternyata bentuk universitas bukan segalanya, tapi aktivitas akademika yang menentukan semuanya, termasuk digital talent scouting. Tepuk tangan untuk kita semua. Selamat kepada seluruh peserta 155 orang yang berhasil mengikuti DTS 2019. Saya kira setelah digital talent scouting ini ada gelar tambahan nggak Pak? Nah, atau hanya sekedar sertifikat. Cuma saya tadi dikasih gelar tambahan Pak, insinyur. Walaupun saya tanda tangan SK insinyur, tapi saya kira saya belum mengikuti apa Pak? Insinyur itu apa? Yang bukan yang ya bukan rekomendasi pelajaran lampaunya belum Pak. Tapi saya kira tidak apa-apa. Saya yakin kalau saya masukkan poin saya cocok saya jadi insinyur. Tepuk tangan untuk insinyur dulu Pak. Bukan juga penyelenggara profesi insinyur Pak. Hanya beberapa universitas di Indonesia yang diamanahkan untuk menjalankan profesi insinyur. Kita termasuk orang yang diamanahkan, jadi tidak membuat proposal. Kemudian cuma sedikit saya laporkan Pak, kemarin saya juga ditemui oleh mahasiswa. Kata mahasiswa, kenapa ranking UNAN turun Pak? Kok turun saya bilang. Itu rankingnya tahun kemarin 10 Pak, tahun sekarang 11. Terus saya katakan aja ke mahasiswa, kalau statis nanti mahasiswa tanya lagi kenapa statis kan? Seolah-olah tidak ada perkembangan. Jadi di dikti itu perankingan universitas setiap tahun Pak, kegiatan per tahun yang dihitung, bukan kegiatan yang telah per tahun dihitung Pak. Artinya dengan kondisi keuangan yang serba terbatas di PTN BLU, kalau PTN ada dana subsidi Pak, kita masih bisa bersaing. Alhamdulillah dengan semangat Pak Dekan Pak Ahmad yang cak mau Pak, kita bisa. So itu yang dihitung sebagai kinerja. So yang dihitung oleh ini adalah kinerja, input, proses, output dan outcome. Nah, itu sudah dinilai persatu. Dan yang paling besar nilai itu adalah output dan outcome. Saya kira ini mungkin termasuk proses proses, dan mudah-mudahan output dan outcome-nya akan sesuai dengan yang kita harapkan. Bila terima kasih kepada Bapak telah memberikan waktu Kemudian selamat juga kepada seluruh peserta. Semoga kegiatan DTS Unan tahun 2019 memberikan manfaat yang besar bagi ketersediaan tenaga kerja terampil di bidang digital, khususnya big data analisis dan artificial intelligence. Banyak maaf apabila topik ada. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Selanjutnya, sambutan sekaligus penutupan Digital Talent Scholarship 2019 oleh Dr. Insinyur Hedi M. Idris, MSc, Kepala Pusat Pengembangan Profesi dan Sertifikasi Balitbank SDM, Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika Republik Indonesia. Kepada Bapak, disilakan.
Yang kami hormati Wakil Rektor 1 Profesor Adrianus, yang kami hormati Dekan Fakultas Informasi FTI Bapak Dr. Ahmad Syafruddin, PIC untuk kegiatan DTS di UNAN, Pak Fazril dan para instruktur serta pejabat di lingkungan Universitas Andalas lainnya. Yang kami hormati Inspektur dari Kementerian Kominfo, Bapak Dr. Andes Nizam. Yang kami hormati ini juga ada tamu dari Pemda, dari Bapeda, terima kasih atas kedatangannya. Serta Honorable Mr. Christopher from Teradata Solution, dan yang kami banggakan ini adik-adik peserta program Fresh Graduate Academy Digital Talent Scholarship 2019. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Pertama-tama kita panjatkan puji syukur kehadirat Allah Subhanahu wa Ta'ala karena atas berkat limpahan kasih sayang darinya kita dapat mengikuti kegiatan penutupan program pelatihan Fresh Graduate Academy ini. Dan adik-adik telah berhasil mengikuti pelatihan ini yang berlangsung selama 144 jam pelajaran. Tunanya kami 144 jam pelajaran. Hadirin yang saya hormati, pada tahun 2019 ini memang kami dari Kementerian Kominfo menyelenggarakan DTS ini yang untuk kedua kalinya seperti tadi disinggung oleh Pak Fadil. Yang pertama tahun lalu itu adalah pilot project, kita bekerja sama dengan 4 universitas sebetulnya di Jawa, UI, ITB, UGM dan ITS, dan 1 UNPAD sebagai pendukung untuk soft skill dan digipreneur. Dan tahun ini kita perluas menjadi lebih banyak universitas agar kita bisa menjangkau seluruh Indonesia, dan salah satunya adalah Universitas Andalas ini. Dan kami mudah-mudahan kerjasama ini bisa berlanjut di tahun yang berikutnya. Pertama-tama DTS ini memang
kami rancang untuk menjawab tantangan adanya kesenjangan antara supply dan demand dari talenta digital. Menurut catatan kami ini lulusan S1 TIK di Indonesia ini sekitar 50 ribuan lah per tahun itu. Kemudian lulusan diplomanya sekitar lebih banyak lagi, itu mungkin 200 ribuan. Untuk SMK itu lulusan bidang TIK sekitar 250 ribu orang per tahun. Jadi totalnya hampir mencapai 500 ribu orang dari bidang keahlian TIK memasuki angkatan kerja muda baru. Jadi cukup banyak, dan di satu sisi kebutuhan industri juga sebetulnya untuk bidang TIK ini cukup banyak juga. Malah dari beberapa diskusi kita dengan industri, mereka masih menyatakan kesulitan untuk mencari talenta-talenta digital. Mungkin salah satu sebabnya ya ada kesenjangan mungkin mix and match gitu ya, link and match ya. Kalau istilah dulu, sebenarnya dari zaman dulu itu udah ada istilah ini. Sehingga di satu sisi walaupun supply dan demand-nya cukup tinggi, tapi belum nyambung betul antara lulusan pendidikan dan kebutuhan industri. Dan untuk itulah Kominfo salah satunya mencoba menjembatani ini dengan kegiatan-kegiatan seperti ini, digital talent scholarship, yang bentuknya adalah pelatihan, kemudian nanti sertifikasi, dan insya Allah kita juga akan lakukan nanti ada pasca pelatihan. Nanti apa saja pasca pelatihannya akan kami coba paparkan ya, sebagai tindak lanjut dari program pelatihan ini. Bapak Ibu yang kami hormati dan adik-adik yang saya banggakan, kebetulan di Andalas ini menawarkan DTS-nya dalam bidang aktivitas intelijen dan big data ya. Tadi Mr. Christopus mungkin menyinggung tentang big data, dan ya sebenarnya terkait juga sih big data dengan artificial intelligence, karena ada bagian dari BI itu juga yang data mining. Mungkin apa yang kita pilih ya, yang kita pilih baik itu BI maupun big data, kalau di tempat lain ada lagi IoT, ada lagi machine learning, ada lagi cyber security, cloud computing ya. Itu semata-mata kita mencoba agar kita siap dalam menghadapi revolusi industri 4.0. Mungkin adik-adik sudah sering ya, sudah pernah mendengar juga apa itu revolusi industri 4.0, yang menjadi suatu keniscayaan lah, itu akan datang cepat atau lambat ke kita, ke Indonesia ya. Mungkin sebagai gambaran saja ya, apa revolusi industri 4.0 ini bisa di ini kan ininya ya, videonya ya, di selingan lah daripada juga speech terlalu banyak, yang video dari, ada video tentang AI ya, bagaimana bersatunya dunia digital dan dunia fisik ya. Ini mungkin kita dengarkan.
Vegas to present to you. Now, it's a pleasure to be here in Las Vegas to present to you. Now, I get invited to do keynotes across the globe. And while it's easy for me to be here in Las Vegas, it isn't always easy for me to travel across the world. And even when I do, I can't always speak the local language. Well, what if neither language nor distance mattered for me to deliver a fantastic keynote? What if technology can help me be anywhere I needed to be and speak any language I wanted? Well, it can. We are bringing together the power of mixed reality and Azure AI services to create a truly game-changing experience. What you're about to see is an exact hologram of me wearing the same outfit that we recently captured at a mixed reality studio. And I don't speak Japanese, but what if I wanted to deliver my keynote in Japanese? Using Azure AI technology, I can translate my English into Japanese and train it to sound exactly like me. The same voice tones, those same inflections. And we brought this together, my hologram and Azure AI, to show you what's possible. So first, I'm going to put on my HoloLens 2 here, and then we'll flip in the room to a special camera so you can see exactly what I'm seeing. Let's get started. First, let me introduce you to Mini-Me. There she is, my perfect hologram. And thanks to the power of HoloLens 2, she just floats right with me. I'm literally holding my hologram, so natural. Now she's a little small to do a keynote. So let's get her up so she can do full-size Japanese keynote. Rendered keynote.
私たちは最新の複合現実キャプチャー技術を使用し、私のプログラムを作成しています。実在の人物をプログラムとして見たことがあるかもしれませんが、私が実際に日本語を話しているのが新しいのです。私は日本語を話しませんが、私の声とプログラムは完璧な日本語で話しています。これはニューラルテキストに呼ばれる最新の人工知能。
Saya nggak mau jualan produk tertentu, bukan bermaksud jualan produk tertentu, tapi ilustrasi tentang AI, dan saya membayangkan ke depan saya tidak perlu datang lagi ke Andalas, mungkin ada hologram saya, ya, bisa bahasa Padang di sini berbicara gitu, yang dihasilkan oleh adik-adik ke depannya, gitu. Mudah-mudahan itu mimpi kita, karena ke depannya teknologi semacam itu akan makin banyak, ya. Kita mobil tanpa supir, robot yang bisa mengasuh kita, itu banyak lah. Dan itu ada teknologi yang akan datang, sehingga kita harus bersiap diri agar kita tidak ketinggalan dan bisa juga menjadi tuan rumah di negeri sendiri. Bapak Ibu sekalian, terselenggaranya Postgraduate Academy ini atas kerjasama Triple Helix lah. Kita cobakan konsep Triple Helix itu menjadi kenyataan antara kami, Kominfo sebagai instansi pemerintah, dengan perguruan tinggi, antaranya Universitas Andalas, dan industri. Ya. Kita bekerja sama dengan Global Technology Company, itu ada 5 Global Technology Company. Yang mungkin ada yang relevan di sini yang untuk nanti sertifikasi yang AI dan big datanya dari Amazon. Tapi kita juga kerjasama dengan Cisco, dengan Microsoft, dengan Google dan lain-lain lah. Termasuk juga nanti untuk pasca pelatihannya ini kita kerjasama dengan startup lokal, ya. Jadi adik-adik dan bapak ibu sekalian, setelah menjalani program ini, adik-adik dapat mengikuti program pasca pelatihan yang menjadi bagian dari program Digital Talent Scholarship. Kementerian Kominfo akan menyediakan platform marketplace pencarian kerja Simonas. Ini ada staf saya yang membangun aplikasi tersebut. Saya bawa juga ini lulusan SMA Bukit Tinggi dan S1 S2 di Gama. Dia yang bikin platform marketplace ini. Dan nanti adik-adik bisa mencoba, dan tanggal 2 kita akan launching. Di situ kalau nanti adik-adik bisa masuk ke dalam Simonas, itu akan kita pasarkan adik-adik dengan industri-industri yang tergabung yang mencari talent-talent melalui Simonas tersebut, aplikasi Simonas. Selain itu juga terdapat platform-platform lain yang kami kerjasama dengan mitra-mitra program pasca pelatihan seperti Master, Big Hunter, dan ID Talent. Ya, itu yang akan mencoba menyalurkan adik-adik juga, baik pemagangan atau nanti bursa online kerja, ya bursa kerja tapi online gitu ya. Selain itu adik-adik untuk bisa kita jual sebetulnya masih memerlukan karena yang dilatih kan sebetulnya teknikal ya, lebih teknikal. Itu mungkin materi-materi soft skill, dan kalau yang ingin berwirausaha dapat materi digipreneur, dan itu sudah tersedia di aplikasi ya. Kita minjem aplikasi dari Unpad ya, sehingga adik-adik bisa masuk gitu ke download situ dan mempelajari, dan nanti dapat sertifikat juga dari materi soft skill seperti yang tadi ya, kemampuan komunikasi, kemampuan kolaborasi dan lain-lain, mungkin nanti diajarkan di situ. Aksesnya saya kira sudah nanti di email, dan kami harap diselesaikan lah oleh adik-adik. Mungkin ada beberapa di sini program pasca pelatihan ini. Jadi kami harapkan adik-adik ya, ini kebacakan. Setelah selesainya pelatihan ini juga terus melanjutkan tadi materi soft skillnya dan digipreneur. Dari soft skill itu akan kita profiling, ya. Akan kita profiling, dan adik-adik diprofiling oleh ID Talent, dan akan dicoba salurkan di situ ya. Dan kita pertemukan dengan para pencari talent. Kemudian yang perlu lagi yang ditindaklanjuti oleh adik-adik ya, ini untuk pertanggungjawabannya ada inspektur juga di sini, bahwa adik-adik perlu tetap mengisi survei monitoring, survei evaluasi, form komitmen dan form pernyataan serta profiling ya. Itu nggak terlalu banyak ya, tapi ini juga profiling terutama adalah berguna agar nanti adik tahu juga talent adik-adik itu kemana, dan kita akan salurkan ya, coba salurkan. Kemudian setelah itu adik-adik ini banyak pesanan dari tadi bisa masuk ke Simonas ya. Di situ sebetulnya Simonasnya aplikasi sistem informasi monitoring alumni sertifikasi kita. Ya. Jadi adik-adik ini kan setelah ini akan beberapa terpilih untuk mengikuti juga sertifikasi internasional ya, sertifikasi vendor khususnya dari AWS ya, yang Artificial Intelligence dan Big Data ini. Dan itu selain adik-adik mendapat sertifikasi atau partisipasi dan completion certification ya, dari baik kami Kominfo, AWS maupun dari Andalas. Ini kami akan coba tawarkan adik-adik kesempatan magang, ya tentu atas persetujuan adik-adik kalau masih nanti berminat, ya kesempatan magang maupun keahlian untuk entrepreneurship serta juga dipertemukan dengan para mencari talent atau mungkin juga yang memerlukan talent. Kita sudah kontak beberapa industri, baik dari industri IT, telco maupun energi yang memerlukan talent digital ini. Mudah-mudahan pada kesempatannya nanti adik-adik bisa terus bergabung dengan. Nah, next. Ini tadi next. Nah, ini apa saja yang itu tadi platform ini bisa dilihat ya. Tadi ada profiling, ada kelas online soft skill development, mentoring online, dan pemagangan serta penyaluran kerja. Ini merupakan program pasca pelatihan kita. Ini kita bekerja sama dengan macam-macam. Tadi sudah startup kita dengan Unpad dan kami sendiri ya tadi pakai platform. Ini nanti soft copy-nya bisa dibagikan juga ke adik-adik ya sebagai tindak lanjut. Pada intinya ini ada kita juga timeline yang mungkin adik-adik setelah ini akan mendapatkan apa gitu ya. Kalau kasih bergabung ya, jadi silakan kalau sudah dapat kerja ya alhamdulillah. Justru tujuan utama kami Pak Warek, KPI kami ini sebetulnya bukan hanya sekedar selesai pelatihan kemudian sertifikat, tapi membantu memfasilitasi adik-adik juga untuk jenjang berikutnya, yaitu untuk yang bekerja, yang ingin berwirausaha, kami coba fasilitasi ya, karena KPI kita memang sebetulnya di situ dari Pak Menteri. Jadi itu sekitar gambaran kepada adik-adik sekalian. What's next setelah dari program digital talent ini. Hadirin yang saya hormati, di akhir sambutan ini saya mewakili Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika sekali lagi menyampaikan ucapan terima kasih dan penghargaan yang tinggi kepada Universitas Andalas beserta seluruh jajarannya, para wakil rektor, dekan, pengajar, dosen dan staf mungkin di sini, staf administrasi juga sangat membantu karena banyak juga ini kita mencoba kerjasama saling administrasi. Semoga kerjasama ini dapat dilanjutkan di tahun-tahun mendatang. Kami juga mohon maaf apabila dalam penyelenggaraan pelatihan ini mulai dari proses persiapan hingga pelaksanaan ada yang kurang berkenan. Demikian sambutan yang dapat saya sampaikan. Sekali lagi saya mewakili Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika mengucapkan selamat atas pencapaian adik-adik sekalian selama mengikuti pelatihan Fresh Graduate Academy Digital Talent Scholarship di Universitas Andalas. Semoga program pelatihan ini memberikan manfaat yang besar bagi peningkatan kualitas SDM Indonesia. Akhirnya dengan mengucapkan alhamdulillahirabbil alamin, program Fresh Graduate Academy Digital Talent Scholarship 2019 di Universitas Andalas secara resmi saya nyatakan ditutup. Wabillahi taufiq wal hidayah.
Selanjutnya, penyerahan sertifikat secara simbolis kepada peserta Digital Talent Scholarship termasuk Universitas Andalas, yang mana peserta diwakili oleh saudara M.A.P.K. Warta dari kelas Big Data Analytics dan saudari Nani Sukma Putri pertama dari kelas Artificial Intelligence. Pada perwakilan silakan. Universitas Andalas, Bapak Profesor Dr. Dakrianus, APT, dan juga oleh Kepala Pusat Pengembangan Profesi dan Sertifikasi Balitbang SDM Republik Indonesia, Bapak Dr. Insinyur Hedi Agustus pada Bapak-Bapak
tahu mana apa jam
Selanjutnya, penyerahan plakat dari Universitas Andalas kepada Kementerian Komunikasi dan Informatika Republik Indonesia. Kembali lagi kita minta Bapak WN1 dan Bapak Dr. Insinyur Hedi Agustus MSc untuk kembali mengambil tempat.
Selanjutnya, penyerahan piagam penghargaan dari Dekan Fakultas Teknologi Informasi Dr. Ahmad Syafruddin Indrapriyatna MT kepada pemateri kita pada hari ini Mr. Christopher Jackson, dan penyerahan piagam penghargaan dari Ketua Pelaksana Bapak Fajril Akbar MSc kepada moderator kita asli Bapak Asli Pindra. Kepada Bapak silakan untuk Bapak.
Sekian acara penutupan Digital Talent Scholarship 2019 pada siang hari ini. Saya selaku pembawa acara Julia Agustin mohon undur diri. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih kita akan melaksanakan foto sesi foto bersama. Ini diharapkan kepada peserta tidak dapat berdepan